Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt and welcome to New Brick Workshop. Now, I'm in the process of making a hall table. It's going to be made out of mahogany and the legs are going to be 40mm square and this is one of them. Now, I want to have a little bit of relief detail by putting a chamfer on part of the leg. It won't start at the very bottom. It'll start from about just over 100mm up from the bottom and end probably about 20mm from where the line of the drawer will be. And that will be on all four edges of each leg. Now, in order to do this, I've got a chamfer cutter in my router table, and I'm going to show you shortly how to set up the router table. But the idea is that one has the chamfer starting somewhere here and ending somewhere there. Now, it's important for me that all four legs are identical. Now, in the past, I've put a pencil line on my fence on left and right so that I knew where to start and where to stop. But this time, because this is a rather special bit of furniture, I want to get all four legs absolutely identical and all four cuts on each leg identical. So first of all, let me show you how I set up the router table, and then I'm going to show you the jig that I've made to make this much easier. Now, I've put my cutter in, and the very first thing to do is to get the fence in the right place. In order to do this, I need a straight edge, and this is a straight edge which I bought from Lee Valley a very long time ago. I use it a lot. Anyway, the first thing to do is to lower the cutter. And this is a bearing guided cutter, and I want to get it so it's just the bearing which is sticking up above the top of the table. And once that is down the right height, I can then loosen off the clamping mechanism for the fence, move the straight edge forward so it's touching the ball bearing. And then I'm going to move the fence forward, and I want now to have the fence touching the straight edge and the straight edge touching that ball bearing guide on that router cutter. And that's it. And once it's in that position, tighten this up. Now, the reason I do this, you could do it with perhaps even without the fence being there, but it then gets a little bit tricky to judge where one should start and stop. And actually, if you have these all in one plane, it means that you can push something against the fence. You know it's going to be in the right place as far as the cutter's concerned. So that's that aspect done. The next thing we need to do is to judge the height that the cutter needs to be. Now, in order to get this right, really, it's just a matter of judgment, and it's your own taste just how big a chamfer you take off. And what I do is, with the cutter in place, I then slide my piece of wood up to it, and it's the actual piece of wood, so that I can judge just what effect that chamfer will have. And then I'm going to get the position where I think is right. And I think that is about it there. And you can have more or less, depends on your own preference. There's no hard and fast rule. But all I would caution is, don't make it too shallow and don't make it too deep. Well, there we go. That's easy, isn't it? So I've got my fence in the right place. I've got the height of the cutter right. Now all I've got to do is work out where to start and stop. And as I said earlier, I used to have these pencil lines. I start there and end when it's there, say. Well, that's no good anymore. I want it to be perfect. So on my piece of wood, I've put a pencil mark where I want the chamfer to start. This is the draw area here, and I've put one near the foot. This is at just over 100mm from the bottom of the leg. And incidentally, as an aside, I mark all of my legs so I know which leg is which. And that is, this is the top of the front right-hand leg. So I've now got my start and end position, but how am I going to do the actual stopping and starting? I have made up a gadget which looks like this, and I'll explain this in detail shortly. Now, the Festool router table does have this very useful slot here, which can get this type of clamp in, which does mean you've got some clamping options for stops. However, not all router tables have that luxury. So I've designed my mechanism to take account of those router tables where you've got to make up your own fixing options, or it may be you've got some fixing options down here, and so therefore you need something that slides in and out, or even one on top of the other, as this will do. And this design of mine, because of this extra piece at the end here, will allow this to be placed one on top of the other, so you've still got a stop at each end, and you've got this expanding capability here. Now, with my router table, there's a V-groove section here and here. So what I've done is I've made up some bits of oak, and you've probably seen these in previous videos, where this V-groove fits down into this channel here, and the top then is flush with the top of the router table. I've actually got this piece on here, and I'll explain that later. And there's one of these for each end. Now, these two pieces are a sort of mirror image of each other, and what I've done is I've put a piece of wood on the end here which forms a stop there, and a piece of wood on the end here forms a stop there. Now, one has to have the ability of setting this up so that the start and stop is within the field of the table, because it's all very well if the start and stop's like this with these pieces independent of each other, but it may be the case that they've got to go one on top of the other. And for that reason, this one has an extra little piece of wood here. I've put some channels here, and they're identical on both, and that's so that if necessary, in this configuration, I could use a pair of bolts to hold these two together, and then it's just a question of fixing this on the top as one unit. But in the case that we're about to do, these two pieces are set up independently. But you can see how this design allows them to be set up as a pair. Now, because this is a festal table and I've got now a gap under here, yet I would want to clamp it here, I've put an extra piece on this piece of wood, so if it goes through that way, I can then clamp down onto it like so. Not needed at this end at all. So that's the whole design, and I will make plans available for this in due course. And the idea is that this one would be positioned so that it's just right for the start of the operation, with the end of the piece of wood just here against this stop. And then the other one would be here, which would stop me going too far. So I've got one at the start and one at the end. And then it's just a question of fixing these in position. So you may have seen these clamps which I got. And the neat trick with this is that you press this button here and the top comes off. And that means that you can get this to go through, either from above or below, it doesn't matter, through a slot like so. And then you refix the end like so, so it's going through there. I've now set this up exactly as I want it, and it's really firm and solid. I'm using these two Bessie clamps going all the way through. There are two holes, one here and one here, in the top of the festal router table, and that's allowed me to come this side of the frame in order to hold these in place, and that's made them pretty stable, and I don't think they're going to move. And I've just checked, I've got it set up where I want it there and set up where I want it here. And I'm now going to do my first test run. Now, it's important to remember that one's going this way when you're doing these cuts on a router table, and I'm going to use this gadget actually to keep the work in against there. So here goes, ear defenders on. And I hope you're able to see there's that cut there, and this is a piece of wood which will form part of the side, so you can see that ends perfectly okay there. So that's that. I'll now do the rest. Now, it really is important to always make sure you've got the top at whichever end you've decided it should be, and in my case it's that end. So there's that leg, the top is here, and that looks really super. Just what I wanted. Many thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.